Let's talk the biggest what ifs in UFC history. Alright, we actually got some terrible news last week. Shavkat Rakhmonov has officially now been removed from the UFC rankings after it was revealed he got hit with another knee surgery that will sideline him for another 9 to 10 months, which is on top of him being out since December 2024, meaning if he ever returns, that would have been a 2-year stretch of inactivity in a very fast-moving division. Shit, maybe Ian Gary was right. He did retire this guy during their fight. As much as I would like to hope, I don't think Shavkat is ever going to return to full form, which got me thinking we might be seeing Shavkat Rakhmonov become one of the biggest what-ifs in UFC history, which also has me thinking, who are the biggest what-ifs in UFC history and where does Shavkat rank amongst them? You cannot talk what-if fighters without talking about the internet's favorite UFC what-if, Zabit Magomedsharipov. He was the most aesthetically pleasing striker coming out of Dagestan. This guy's kicks were insane. He would throw a lot of precise spinning kicks, cartwheel kicks, capoeira kicks, switch kicks in the air, just the craziest stuff you would see out of nowhere. He was a master of distance and just being in a flow state of hitting and not getting hit. And for a striker, he actually had a solid submission threat as well, submitting half of his opponents he fought in the UFC. He was super talented and was climbing up the rankings fast with wins over Jeremy Stephens when he was ranked and Calvin Kattar. It was looking like featherweight had a real problem, but when he wanted to fight higher in the rankings to make his way to the belt, apparently he wasn't getting those fights for one reason or another. He was scheduled to fight Yair Rodriguez, which would have been an insane show of kicking and striking in general, but when Yair got injured, it fell through. And apparently, this is by Ali Abdelaziz, so take it by a grain of salt, but Yair was supposed to be booked like 3 or 4 times, and because it fell through, Zabit started to lose interest in the sport. Canceled fights with no clear path to the belt, coupled with his health problems and his immune system problems, would leave him sidelined in 2019 and pretty much stopped Zabit's career momentum and ultimately his career entirely. Which is like, what the hell is happening in the Caucasus Mountains? Why are these guys constantly fighting with a weak immune system? But good news is Zabit is now a doctor apparently, or at least rumored to be, pursuing being a doctor, so maybe he can find out why him and Hamzat and everybody in this region has immune system problems, but by all accounts, he is doing good in life, which is really nice. So, would he have been champion had he never left the UFC? The internet would love to think so, given how talented he is and how short of a career he had, and his allure only grows given that he left on top. But I hate to burst everybody's bubble, but I don't think he would have been champion. He left at ranked 3 in the featherweight rankings and was probably going to get a title shot in the next 1 or 2 fights, had he beat Yair especially. But then he would have faced Max or Volkanovski, and I simply just don't think he's beating either of those guys. As talented as Zabit was, he just didn't have the cardio to keep that style up. He did well against Calvin Kattar and definitely won, but damn, was he fading in the third and didn't look like that super talented aura maxing version of himself towards that last round. Kattar started to land clean and land hard in the third, and you can definitely tell in Zabit's body language that he was gassed, just trying to circle out and survived, knowing that he banked the first 2 rounds. So if he got gassed in a 3-rounder against Calvin Kattar, imagine Max Holloway or Volkanovski. He would have been eaten up alive. Again, he's very good and fun to watch, but he would have had maybe the first 2 rounds before falling victim to the pressure of Max or Volk. And it's not like Zabit had that one-punch type power to end Max and Volk in those first rounds before they got downhill. So in reality, we didn't lose a future champion. We probably lost a future really good contender that would have had really fun fights against the top guys in the featherweight division, but we'll never know. Then you have one of the biggest what-ifs in UFC history that's going on right now, and that's Shavkat Rakhmonov. I swear, I think the legend of Shavkat in the next 3 or 4 years is going to be exactly like the legend of Zabit. Here's a guy on a monster win streak, an unreal finish rate, having finished all but one of his wins, and a guy, unlike Zabit, was literally right there at the belt. The belt was practically in his hands, and I'm damn sure he would have beat Belal that night. But unfortunately, in this reality, he got injured before he was supposed to face Belal last year, and JDM took his place, and now Islam. Like I said, the division moves fast from Shavkat, especially now that young killers like Carlos Prates and Michael Morales are moving up the rankings as well. And while these guys continue to move up, Shavkat continues to get injured. He injured his knee before the Belal fight and now recently needs another surgery, which is set to sideline him for another 9 to 10 months. And it sucks. Shavkat has the skill set to give us violent fights against all those guys, JDM, Prates, Morales, and probably Islam too. Shavkat could finish guys anywhere. He could take you down, ragdoll you, and submit you. He could also throw wheel kicks and knock you out, and giant punches that would hurt you and then still submit you. He was a finisher anywhere the fight went, and given how long and tall he is for the division, he's just physically a matchup nightmare as well. I will die on this hill. He would have been champion had he been healthy and faced Bilal instead of JDM that night, but again, we'll truly never know. Though I will say this, I don't think Shavkat would have been champion for all too long. As much as I like Shavkat, he gets hit a lot. He's vulnerable and very beatable. He's a classic take a punch to land one, and with this division being so stacked with killers like Morales and Prates, it would have been hard to stay perfect against those guys on the feet. Ian Gary also alternatively showed that elite jiu-jitsu can compromise him on the ground, so even though Shavkat, I think, would have been champion, I doubt his style would have kept him there. When Shavkat was on and he was violent, he was really fun to watch, but because of injuries, unfortunately, he's turning into one of the biggest what-ifs in UFC history. Ooh, okay, this is a name you probably haven't heard of in quite some time. I remember Sage Northcutt like it was yesterday. He was so young when he debuted in the UFC at just 19 years old. But despite how early he was in his career, he already had an insane amount of hype around him, given his striking skills, insane athleticism, and his physique. God damn, he is still one of the best built fighters ever. He's lean and, like the name suggests, cut as hell. I mean, look at these abs, bro. Alright, anyways, in terms of his fighting style, he was super high paced, bringing his striking skill from his karate base, but could also jump on the submission like he did on Dana White's Looking for a Fight, which got him signed to the UFC. And he continued his finish streak into the UFC with his KO in his debut and guillotine in his second fight. But his short and early win streak would be snapped by Brian Barberena via arm triangle in this fight. He did bounce back with a win over Enrique Martin before getting fed a very good grappler in Mickey Gall. Yes, the Mickey Gall who finished CM Punk and got finished himself via rear naked choke. It was pretty clear that Sage had very good striking, but just didn't have the jiu-jitsu to keep up, and his opponents were exploiting that. Though, given how young he was, mind you, this is all happening in his early 20s, you would expect that he would have developed his jiu-jitsu. But despite going on a 3-fight win streak and even getting a KO in his last fight in the UFC, I guess Dana in the UFC didn't care about his development and didn't re-sign him when his contract was over. Which is really strange, considering Sage Northcutt was so young, so talented, probably going to develop his jiu-jitsu, and most importantly, was still a fan favorite and a relatively established name at the time. Meanwhile, today you have Tai Tuivasa, who's currently on a 6-fight losing streak and hasn't been cut, presumably because he's such a fan favorite. Anyways, Sage would sign to 1 and debut at middleweight against Cosmo Alexandre, which would lead to this infamous moment, unfortunately, that happened in less than 30 seconds. Sage took that perfect right hand over the top, and it was over just like that. This punch was so bad that it fractured his face in 8 different places and pretty much halted his career. I remember a lot of people thinking that this was it for Sage Northcutt. This was the end of his career despite how young he was at the time. Not only did he take a long layoff, he actually became a real estate agent kind of in the LA area. But after 4 years, he said, fuck this, and came back to the MMA world and actually pulled off a heel hook in the first 39 seconds in his return. And man, I'm so happy for Sage. I'm so happy that he had this moment. It was such a sweet and unexpected comeback. And now he's set to fight in karate combat soon as well, so we might be still seeing Sage Northcutt fighting in some capacity. But would have Sage been champion? It's so hard to say just because he was so young in the little time we saw him in the UFC. You can point to him being pretty much just a striker and getting choked out easily by pretty much any guy they gave him that had decent jiu-jitsu, but come on, Sage was like 20-ish years old when this happened. I want to say, like I said before, that he could have developed had he been given much more time, and he could have been a very good contender given his athletic ability, but it just sucks that the UFC didn't give him a chance to do so. But anyways, what do you guys think about the biggest what-ifs that I laid out in this video? Is Shavkat Rakhmonov becoming one of the biggest what-ifs in UFC history? Is he going to have that allure and that aura that Zabit has? I don't know. It's a lot of great what-ifs and a lot of cool things to think about. But anyways, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on the topic of today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.